Hello and welcome to another episode of our Campervan conversion. In this episode we're going to be installing a sliding door window. I've used a 95mm hole saw just to give me a nice smooth edge around the four corners. And I've just simply marked the center of the hole saw and put the pilot hole first, and then just use the hole saw with a guide drill bit and made the first hole. It's really not much to it as ever, just take your time and try to do a tidy job, and try not to go crazy fast with your hole so you don't want to overheat it. First couple of holes was no problem at all. Hole saw just worked perfectly well. Now again just making a pilot hole for the hole saw here. Now here I've started to struggle a little bit with a hole saw. I even brought my corded drill out just for a little bit more power. I'd say my hole saw wasn't the best quality and it went dull after just 2 holes. And here, no matter how hard I've tried, I just couldn't make a 4th hole here. Eventually I just gave up on it and just made a lot of small 2mm holes around that corner. And then I just took my spirit level out and drew some guidelines. To cut an opening for the window you can use a few different tools. You can use a jigsaw or nibbler, and I personally used a tool called reciprocating saw, but you have to be very careful with that because it's a very powerful tool and it can literally cut your van in half. Now here you can see I've started cutting the opening from outside, and I've started to follow that guideline, but if I would do it again I would probably do it from inside, because I think from inside it gives you a little bit more control. So because that blade wobbles quite a bit and it kind of goes everywhere, so I think from inside you will be better controlling your saw. And just as ever, take your time and do maybe like 4 inches at a time and then stop, do another 4 inches and then stop. Here I'm using my saw from inside, and I think from inside, as I said, it gives you a little bit more control and you can see exactly where your blade is, so it's a little bit handy in my opinion. It's a very good reason why I've started cutting my window out in a sliding door. The reason behind it is if something would have went drastically wrong, at least I can change the whole door. You see, I have never done it before and I wanted to get a bit of the practice before I cut my window opening from the other side. Now here on the left you can see my blade went of course a little bit, and it went past that lip, which is not supposed to go past. Of course it's not ideal, but my U-trim will be covering it anyway. And I'll be getting window pods from One Shades, so you're never gonna be able to see it. As I said before, it's a learning process and you do make mistakes, but once you don't do too many mistakes, you'll be alright. And this is just a sneak peek how it will look like. As I said before, I'll be getting in One Shade, so it will be covering all window anyway, and that edge trim will be covering my mistake as well. So it a good thing about the saw I'm using, it's a very powerful tool, as I said before, and it will go through this center reinforcement bar like a hot knife through the butter. But if you're using a jigsaw, for example, you more than likely will struggle with this center bar. You're gonna have to take your angle grinder out and then cut it off from inside with an angle grinder, and it will create a lot of sparks, which is not ideal. You see, the less sparks you create, the better, because sparks will damage your paintwork and it can damage your glass as well. So if you're using an angle grinder and you're going down the road using an angle grinder, just make sure you're gonna cover everything. And once you cut your window out, it's time to take your file out and just smooth all the rough edges. I was doing it by hand, but eventually I just gave up on it and took my angle grinder out. As I said before, if you are using your angle grinder, just make sure you're gonna cover everything. I've used a flap disc, I think it was 120 grit on a flap disc, but it doesn't create much sparks. It doesn't create any sparks at all, in fact, but still ideally you would want to cover everything. And once you're happy everything nice and smooth, you need to degrease the area with something like white spirit and then prime it. You get a primer and bonding. It's like a kit from people who you buy your glass from. Just make sure you're gonna prime all the rough edges as well, all the bare metal. And after your primer is touched to dry, takes about half an hour, you can put your U-trim on. Just try to do it with your fingers first and then use a rubber mallet as well. Just make sure everything nice and flat, so when you put your window on, it will be no raised areas. So your window will sit nice and flush, nice and flat. And maybe it's a good idea to dry fit your window first, just to test it, how it looks like, and then you'll see if it's rocking a little bit. It means you have to reuse your rubber mallet again just to flatten everything out. It's recommended to apply your primer in one nice smooth line, so don't be using it like a paintbrush and go up and down in strokes, but just one nice smooth line will do you. And now I think I wanted to tell you, this primer is very runny, so make sure you're gonna squeeze it out a little bit and then apply it to your panel. And once your primer is dry, it takes about half an hour for it to be dry to touch. It's time to apply your bonding. You might want to put your bottle of bonding in hot water or put it in front of the heater for a little bit, so it will come out a little bit easier. Usually bottle's nozzle is already pre-cut for the nice thick line of bonding. Just make sure it's no gaps anywhere, and then just take your time as ever and apply it to your panel. And then once you applied your bonding, it's time to apply your glass activator, and then you have to prime the glass as well. So primer apparently stops any UV light from damaging your bonding and destroying it. And then simply just offer your glass to a panel, and make sure it's straight, even gaps everywhere. And once you're happy, just use some masking tape just to keep it in place so it wouldn't slide down. And this is how you install a window on a sliding door from a passenger side. And if you're doing it on your driveway just like myself, make sure you're gonna pick yourself a nice sunny day, because by the end of the day you're at the mercy of the weather. If it's gonna rain, it's gonna ruin your work basically.
Can we talk about the truth? I wanna know, I wanna know. Can we talk about me and you?
Now guys, thank you ever so much for watching my videos. If you found it helpful, please give us a like, drop us a comment, and consider subscribing. It will mean a lot to me to have you subscribe. And for now, take care, and I'll catch you at the next one. Cheers.